Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, folks. How you doing? It's Danny Tisdale, and it's the Danny Tisdale Show, and I hope you are all doing well as we are still, I'm going to say, to the middle to end of the COVID crisis that we seem to be, that we're in right now. And as you know, we every show that we do every week, we speak to leaders, legends, and trailblazers who are in and outside of Harlem, who work to, do the great work that needs to be done. And we love celebrating the greatest community in the world, and that is Harlem. And today we have another opportunity to shine a light on those who are working in the community to help us all. And that's someone from Wells Fargo, and that's Stephen Ball, who's on the show today. And Stephen is Wells Fargo's Government Relations and Public Policy Senior Vice President for the Northeast region. Stephen, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well, Danny. Thanks so much for having me on, and I hope you're doing well also.
I am doing well, and thank you. I knock on wood, I could be worse, so I thank you for asking. And part of, our conversation came out of an article we posted. I think it was on the 10th of the month, and it was titled "Relief on the Hudson: Meals by World Central Kitchen at Jacobs Javits Center." And, I wanted to talk about that and some of the other policy issues and other issues. But just to explain a little bit about, can you talk a little bit, Stephen, about what you do as Senior Vice President of Government Relations and Public Policy for Wells Fargo?
Absolutely. And again, I really appreciate your time and speaking with me this afternoon. In my role as Senior Vice President for Government Relations and Public Policy, I lead Wells Fargo's legislative and political agenda for a region of 8 states in total. And the footprint is essentially New Jersey all the way up to Maine. I'm based here in New York City. My office is on 42nd Street, but it's a very active region, as you might imagine. Even when we don't have a pandemic,
understatement, right?
There's always a lot going on. So it's, but it's a lot of fun. I mean, I get to meet elected officials from across the region, get to influence policy, and get to really figure out how I can help support communities like Harlem and similar communities throughout the region. And so it's very rewarding, and every day is something different.
I know it is, and I was going to say, brother, you got your work cut out for you, because I can only imagine that we're just talking about, directly Harlem, but then as we look at the, entire Northeast region, I could only imagine the sleepless nights, and then those nights where I'm sure that, you've hit your goal and what you want to happen, and it happens. So I can imagine that's exciting also. But, I wanted to get right into it, talk a little bit about, Stephen, of some of the employees that are being affected in the Northeast region that you represent. Is it frontline workers like tellers, or do we know yet who of the Wells Fargo employees are being affected the most?
Sure. Well, I would say all of us at Wells Fargo have been impacted in one way or another, whether it's, either working on the front lines, as you mentioned, like a number of our bank branch employees, also
right.
folks, many of whom are working from home right now because of all of the shutdown and restrictions that the governments have imposed. And, this is something that really it transcends every part of America. I mean, I know that African Americans and Latinos are disproportionately impacted by the virus.
Right.
I think all of us, whether it's our work life, home life, family, friends, we're all seeing this. I mean, I had a friend, one of my best friends, a childhood friend, whose mom passed away sadly a couple weeks ago from cancer. But because of COVID-19, he and his dad could not visit her when she was in the hospital. And so, she had to spend many of her last hours alone, unfortunately. And, when you just think about that and you think about the real impact this has, it's hitting us all, even if we don't actually get the virus itself.
Yeah, and it's, it's so humbling, that, you can be a football player and be in great shape. You can be a mom, a grandfather, anyone, and it can affect you, and it has affected them. And I'm very curious to see what the research says about what's happening, because it seems like some people are affected, and in a couple of days they're back on track and slowly but surely getting to be 100%, and then some people are affected, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but then they're gone in a short period of time. So it is pretty astonishing.
Absolutely, and because of that, because we want to ensure that our customers and employees who do have to come into the branches are treated with the utmost protection and respect for CDC regulations and all those sorts of safeguards. We've taken enhanced cleaning procedures in our branches, our offices, any customer contact centers. Obviously, you've seen a number of the orders that the governor has issued regarding face coverings, and we're complying with like that. But we've also adjusted our branch hours nationwide. We've moved it to a narrower time frame, so 9:30 to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday, and then Saturday from 9 a.m. to noon. And we did that because, we think that limits the chance of exposure that people will have if they're, we're not open quite as many hours. And, we're also providing, in terms of financial support, some employees are receiving up to $1,600 cash awards, just as an indication of the company's appreciation for their support. Now, in Harlem in particular, we've temporarily closed our branch at 125th and Lenox, just, in recognition of the virus and an abundance of caution. But we are still operating our branch at 117th and Lenox. And again, that's with all enhanced safety measures to protect our customers and employees.
Well, and that's fantastic and makes, of course, a lot of sense under the circumstances. And contributions, you mentioned the word contributions, and I did want to, of course, mention something I mentioned in the intro, which is the relief on the Hudson, which were meals that were given through the World Central Kitchen at Jacob Javins. And I understand that you gave, or should I say donated, $500,000 to the effort, and, certainly want to commend you for your efforts there, because, of course, that's something that you don't have to do, and Wells Fargo did that, and as I said, we love to shine a light on those who are doing that kind of great work.
Well, we certainly appreciate that, and we think, it's a reflection of our concern for the city and its workers, and just what an enormous kind of sacrifice this requires for all of us. We have one of our major offices at Hudson Yards, which is not too far from the Javits Center, so, we're a stone's throw from there. So we really wanted to step up and support our community, support those who are really doing heroic work, putting themselves on the front line, and it was exciting that we were able to do that. If I can, I'd also like to share.
Please.
We've also some other great philanthropy around COVID-19 in New York, and we hope that will ultimately benefit Harlem as well. So one of the things that I'm proudest of is we were one of the first companies to step up and donate $1 million to support the NYC COVID-19 Response and Impact Fund.
Great.
So we were one of the first donators to step up. That fund is now approximately $75 million, but what it'll do is it'll support New York City-based social services and arts and cultural organizations that have been struggling because of the coronavirus impact. So we're excited about that. Nonprofits of small and medium size are in particular slated to benefit from that, and we know that Harlem is a community with plenty of great nonprofits and a long history of that. So, the hope is that that donation and that fund translates to benefiting Harlem through that. Additionally, we provided $250,000 toward the United Way of New York City's COVID fund, and along the same lines, that supports communities that are disproportionately impacted by this crisis. And as I said before, we've seen that African Americans, and I would say expand it and say black people in general, are disproportionately impacted by this. So one would hope that the funds and the resources that we've allocated to this would certainly translate to supporting our communities like Harlem.
Well, and certainly so. And I have to, virtually give you a hug, Stephen, because, I'm an artist when I'm not a publisher. So, any funds to our my fellow artists out there, and, whether they're singers, dancers, paint or sculpt, I know they need the funds. So I really appreciate that, in a big way. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's funny. People don't realize the scale of what the artistry community is. I mean, I was talking to one of my colleagues about this a few weeks ago, and
Stephen, don't get me started. Don't get me started, Stephen.
Well, I'm sure you can.
I'm sorry to cut you off.
No,
I'm sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
Speak volumes about it, but it's just, you just often don't think about, there's so many vibrant cultural things that make New York City and Harlem what it is. And so that's really, the lifeblood of New York. And so I'm glad that as a company we were able to support a fund that will help people that are part of that community.
Well, certainly so. And I don't want to get overly political here, and you don't have to respond, but the arts through the National Endowment for the Arts has been cut by our president, and so I it's almost a double thank you in that sense, and we're not even talking about life outside of COVID yet. So I just want to give you a double thank you. And I listened to the mayor's mayor's press conference every day, every morning, I guess you could say, and I was pretty astonished that the rate of the death rate for Hispanics seemed to be 10 percentages higher than his last report last time, and it was more than African Americans and more than Asians. And I just wanted to say that and put that out there, that how your support and others who are supporting New York City, how that support really can help those in need and do it in a very direct kind of way. Sometimes we talk about donations, and it's like it's another donation. We don't know where that money's going. This is money that actually helps people who are in need and people who are dying.
Absolutely. It's so true, and it's I think there's so many different layers to this crisis and how it's disproportionately hitting people of color. I grew up in the Detroit area, and my parents were still there, and I was amazed to see Michigan, being number 3 in number of cases, and just reading about how the virus has ripped through Detroit and impacted a lot of people there. And as you know, Detroit's a majority African American city. So, I think some of it, and this is just speculating, I'm not an expert, but I think some of it is just obviously access to health care. I think people in our communities often don't have the same access. I think it's knowledge and getting the information out there. I recall that when things first sort of started swirling with this, there were all these rumors going on online and jokes and memes about black people, being impervious to the virus and having immunity and all this stuff.
I saw that too.
Yeah. So, you hope that didn't really spread and take root in people's minds a lot, but you never know, because then you see things the other day like people ingesting chemicals because of what the president said during his
the infamous press conference. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think there are just a lot of different factors that combine, but it is sad to see our communities and the Latino communities being hit disproportionately, and hopefully as we learn more about this virus and as time goes on, we can figure out different public policy steps and other measures to take to combat it and protect our communities more so than we've done so far.
Most definitely, Stephen Ball. I just want to let our listeners know they're listening to the Danny Tisdale Show. And, of course, I'm Danny Tisdale on Harlem World Magazine Radio. Harlem World Magazine is an independently owned company, so please hit that orange patron button down below and become a patron. We are speaking to Wells Fargo's Stephen Ball. Stephen is Senior Vice President of Government Relations and Public Policy for Wells Fargo. And we're, of course, talking about the COVID crisis and the work that can be done. And I guess one could say the positives in this fight. Americans are always fighters. When we're up against the rope, whether it's been 9/11 or some of the catastrophes in the past, we put our back against the ropes and, we're fighters and we get through all of the drama, as deadly as it may be, and we will get through this. And Stephen, it's great for you to be on the call with me. And I just want, to maybe the second half to look in your, if I could get you to your government relations, not so much government relations maybe, but your public policy crystal ball. And it may be some tough questions, so I'll let you run with it here. Do you think, because this is a healthcare situation, scenario, Stephen, that maybe one or two presidents down the road that we start looking at national health care? I did say that, national health care. I'll say it again, national health care.
Well, I definitely think it's something that we should consider and we should look at among the range of options. Obviously, depending on the outcome of how the election goes in the fall, we could see the timeline potentially move up a little sooner than, one or two presidents from now. We'll see. But I definitely think it's something that it's really, it's just the latest thing, I think, that has underscored the unfortunate impact that we see with lack of access to health care in this country, and the way in which seeking care is such a financial burden that it's just a hurdle for so many. Now, I think different stakeholders have different roles to play in this, and I know companies are looking at it. They've identify different ways and innovative ways where they think they can step up. Obviously, government has a role to play as well. But, to your point, I mean, we'll see. It doesn't seem like the current administration would certainly move in that direction. But, hopefully something like COVID-19 is just a once-a-century thing. I mean, the Spanish flu, that was about 100 years ago. But, I mean,
right.
You almost have to think that, I mean, we've had other epidemics in the last 10 years or so. Maybe they weren't this bad. But as the world continues to grow closer and more connected and there's travel across boundaries and all that, you have to think that these sorts of outbreaks will not be as easily containable as they may have been in the past. So,
right.
I would say certainly strengthening our healthcare and ensuring better access for all populations has to be part of the solution for combating this and future health risks as well.
Yeah, it just, to me, makes common sense, and I don't want to, really talk about this the rest of our conversation. It's just a part of it, but I think it's worth talking about the fact of it being an investment in, our American populace, that we invest in them so that they can stay healthy longer, so that everybody wins in a way, that they can work longer, businesses can have them work in their businesses for a longer, healthier period of time. It just seems like a wise, long-term investment, and I guess much like I hear you saying, I really hope we kind of take a look at that before, two presidents, which is 8 years down the road. So, I'm with you on that, and to kind of bring it back home locally. Is there anything you think on the policy side that can be done, Stephen, for small, businesses? And, at least, my mother used to always say, don't complain about something unless you have an idea to help the situation. Everybody can complain, but how can you fix it? How can you be part of the solution instead of part of the problem? And so, we were thinking in-house here with our advisory board of, can we create some kind of buy local program for small businesses once this is over? But, how can I help my fellow, small businesses? How can we help businesses not just survive through this, but to grow afterwards? And I guess it almost comes back to all of us kind of looking at our local crystal balls. Is there anything that you could think of locally, Stephen, that, small businesses can do? Of course, we can reach out and get loans and take advantage of grants, and I'm not saying no to that. I'm just saying just other things that can, be done, through, let's say, business improvement districts, through Chamber of Commerce's. Any ideas that
Sure.
you may have?
Sure. Well, I'll answer that in two parts. So I'll start by saying, one thing that people can approach this, and businesses can approach this in sort of a short-term and then longer-term fashion. So in the short term, I think one of the things that you alluded to is taking advantage of the relief that is available right now. I can't speak for other banks. I can only speak for Wells Fargo, of course. But I will say, at Wells Fargo, serving the small business segment is one of the most important things that we do, and I think our track record shows that. So, we've taken a number of steps to support our customers, and I want to make sure that they're aware of these options, because some of the challenges, folks may not know that there is this relief available, and they may think that, banks are still operating in ways that they do when there's not a crisis. But things are pretty different right now in terms of the relief that's offered. So, for example, some of the things we're granting payment relief for small business customers up to 90 days. We're granting fee waivers. We're granting payment deferrals. We're increasing lines of credit for disaster relief. We're offering these things to support our customers because we understand that it's a difficult time. So those things can help them weather the storm in the short term. There's also, I'm sure you're aware of the federal Paycheck Protection Program that was recently created. Wells Fargo is participating in that as well, and we just saw late last week that Congress approved an additional $310 billion in funding for that. So we're excited to continue to participate in that, and that's another very valuable resource that businesses can tap into as well. So those, I would say, are the short-term options. Now, looking longer term, and again, this is just speculating, but I would say certainly partnering with chambers of commerce, because one of the things that we found is those organizations are a great way to connect with elected leaders and share ideas and really develop. Yeah, I mean, it's a great way to have a conversation and develop practical, real ideas that work for businesses and often are also politically feasible. At Wells Fargo, we're a member, for example, of the Partnership for New York City, and they've hosted discussions with Comptroller Stringer, and he's talked about all sorts of ideas around improving access to credit and using rent history as indicative of your credit worthiness. So things like that, where it requires sometimes thinking outside the box and fostering a dialogue between business and government, I think are very helpful. I also think it's helpful for businesses just to participate in the democratic process and contact I mean, it sounds maybe kind of obvious and not as sexy as other things, but contacting, their legislators, being in touch with their city council members, being part of it and raising those concerns. The only way they know is if you tell them. They can't necessarily read your mind. So just sharing the happy things, the painful things, all those things, being in touch and being part of that democratic process, I think, is key.
Great points, Stephen. And as I knew what happened, we have 2 minutes left, Stephen. And I wanted to, I still wanted to have you kind of look into your ball about how banking will change, whether it will become more, less face-to-face and more online. But we've got 1 minute and 30 seconds left, and I just really would like you to, give a URL so our readers can either open an account with Wells Fargo or stay in contact with some of the policy stuff that you're doing. But any contact information where our readers can stay in contact with Wells Fargo and the work that you're doing?
Oh, absolutely. So I would say that the best starting point is wellsfargo.com/here-to-help. Now, that's a dedicated COVID resource page with all the information that I shared today, as well as frequently asked questions, basically anything you want to know related to COVID and our other many community efforts you can get to from wellsfargo.com/here-to-help. If you want to open an account, obviously it's wellsfargo.com can take you there. Now, and I'll just end by saying this. I thank you for your time. And in terms of looking into the crystal ball, it starts with digital. It starts with the very thing that this experience has underscored, in that there's so much now that can be done electronically.
20 seconds.
That's amazing. And so, folks should look at our website, check out our app. And I just thank you so much, Danny, for giving me this opportunity to speak today and engage with your listeners. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Stephen. It's great talking to you. And I'm jealous because you're working in policy and I'm not. But thank you for being on the show, Stephen. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Many thanks to you, and stay healthy and safe.
Thank you. Same to you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.